Again. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is our July 31st, 2024 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. There are paper copies of the agenda on the table by the door if anyone wants them, and of course the full packet is available online. This evening we do have a proclamation, and then we will move into our consent agenda. After our consent agenda, we will do a general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we will apply certain rules regarding public comment. A recent Kansas federal court decision has provided additional clarity regarding standards for public comment, and we have updated our practices accordingly. We will do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Each speaker will have a total of 3 minutes. Individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers, and all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. We also maintain the decorum of our meeting, therefore we prohibit public comments that are threatening, aggressively hostile or belligerent, fighting words, slander, or speech that invades the privacy of individuals, unreasonably loud, disruptive, or repetitive, or that interrupt or substantially interfere with the board's ability to conduct county business. We do reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who violates these public comment rules. At that time, we'd ask for your full name and address for the meeting minutes and to address your comments to the Commission. Please know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County, but that we value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comment on the spot, but if you leave contact information with county staff, we will try and get specific questions answered. Of course, we do accept public comment of any length in emails, etc. After that, we move to our regular agenda. On those, for each action item, we'll hear from staff or an applicant, followed by questions from the Commission, and then open that item up for public comment relevant to that item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring it back to the Commission for further discussion and a vote. Lastly, the recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. So we do have a proclamation to start the evening, and I believe that we have some folks here who will speak to it as soon as I read it out. So the proclamation for National Healthcare Week, August 4th through 10th, 2024. Whereas for over 50 years, community health centers like Heartland Community Health Center have provided high-quality, affordable, comprehensive primary and preventative health care, dental care, and mental health care in our nation's medically underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact on America's healthcare system. Whereas every day, community health centers develop new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral health, behavioral health, and pharmacy services, to provide comprehensive care allowing each community member to thrive. Whereas community health centers are governed by patient-majority boards, ensuring patients are engaged in their healthcare decisions. Whereas the community health center model continues to prove an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status, improving health outcomes, and reducing healthcare system costs for over 21,000 patients served by Heartland each year. Whereas community health centers reduce overall costs of care by helping manage patients' chronic conditions, which helps them out of more expensive healthcare settings like hospital emergency rooms. Whereas community health centers are on the front line of emerging healthcare crises, providing access to care for our nation's veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to public health threats in the wake of natural disasters. Whereas National Health Center Week offers the opportunity to celebrate America's more than 1,400 community health center organizations with over 15,000 service delivery sites, including 3,600 schools. We honor their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. Whereas during National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's community health centers and their vital role in shaping the past, present, and future of America's healthcare system. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas, hereby proclaim August 4th through 10th, 2024, as National Health Center Week. I encourage all Americans to participate in this week by visiting their local health center and celebrating this vital partnership between America's community health centers and the communities they serve. Adopted this 31st day of July 2024 by the Board of Douglas County Commissioners. And I think we have some representatives from Heartland if you'd like to come up and speak.
Got it. Well, dear Douglas County Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak today as we recognize National Health Center Week. This celebration is a special recognition to the invaluable role that a federally qualified health center like Heartland plays in addressing affordable, accessible, and high-quality health care for all. As someone who has had the privilege of working at the health center for over a decade, I've had the firsthand experience to see the tremendous impact of how health centers change the lives of those that we serve. We serve as a lifeline by offering preventative primary care, chronic disease management, and provide essential medical, dental, behavioral health, and pharmaceutical services needed by many. I've had the opportunity to witness our staff not only save lives, but transform them. I think a recent patient cared for by the health center said it best. This patient, who has recently experienced homelessness, substance use, and chronic illness, told us that your staff, you've given me and my family the momentum, encouragement, and motivation to all around fix and address the issues in my life. This National Health Center Week, we celebrate the dedication and compassion of our healthcare professionals, advocates, and health champions who are committed to meet the diverse needs of our patients. Their commitment goes beyond just medical care. They provide a sense of hope and foundation for a healthier future and represent the shared mission of a healthier Douglas County. Heartland has made remarkable progress in advancing the mission of healthcare at a local level, as you said, serving more than 21,000 patients last year. We aim to reach communities where they are by partnering with organizations like Head Start to ensure families in our community have the health screenings required to be in the school. We ensure that children have access to comprehensive oral health through our school-based dental program, Healthy Futures. We are also proud to work in collaboration with local health organizations to address the healthcare need of those experiencing homelessness. This year alone, we've provided healthcare and wraparound services to more than 300 unique patients experiencing homelessness with at least 2,000 encounters at the health center. National Health Center Week serves as a reminder of the foundational work that community health centers have in the lives and in our communities. We believe we are agents of hope, centers of compassion, and we stand committed to the mission to welcome all who need care in our community. By celebrating this week, we not only express our gratitude to our dedicated staff, but also recommit ourselves to the belief that quality healthcare is a right and not only a privilege. So thank you for joining and celebrating and honoring with us these health champions in our community and the wellness we aim to reach in Douglas County. So let's move healthcare forward.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We have your proclamation for you, but we're missing Commissioner Reed. Would you like to have it now or wait and get that third signature?
We can take it now.
Okay. Sure.
I'll track her down.
Thank you. That moves us to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on our consent agenda and missing one commissioner. Commissioner, do you have any items you would like to pull for further discussion? Well, I do. I'd like to pull item 2.4. Is there anyone in the public who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? 2.4 already being pulled.
2.2, please.
2.2. And anyone else? Sarah, do we have anyone online? Okay. With that, I would accept or entertain a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve item 2.1, 2.3 on the consent agenda.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Item number 2.2, accounts payable. I don't have any particular questions for staff on this. Commissioner, do you have anything you'd like to ask or share? Okay. With that, we would open this item up to public comment, if anyone would like to make a public comment.
I pulled this item tonight to ask a question, given the conversation that we had last week about the Douglas County Sheriff just doing their own bidding process. I'm curious if either two of the commissioners that are here tonight, and maybe Shannon Reed can answer later, if you guys have actually reviewed the accounts payable. I mean, have you actually reviewed them? Looked through them to see what money is being spent before you approve them and sign your name to them. That's an important and vital function of the county administration and the county elected officials. You guys are the consent. They come to you with proposals on what they spend, and you guys are the consent through us. I question, given the discussion that we had last week, and Patrick, I'm sorry, but You didn't seem to realize that the comments about the sheriff doing his own bid process were in the packet. You even said so during the meeting. That indicated to me that you had not read that packet. We voters have a problem with that, especially in the fact that your county administrator is putting millions of our dollars in the bank, and the county's collecting the interest on that, while our bank accounts are slowly dwindling down to nothing due to high food costs, high energy costs, high everything costs. We need that money in our bank accounts to do some interest earning there. I hope you're reviewing the accounts payable. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who'd like to give public comment on this item? Do we have anyone online? All right, with that, we will close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the commission.
Motion to approve item 2.2, accounts payable.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 2.4 is the one that I pulled, in part because this hadn't been, of course, this is the beginning of the process, but it hadn't really been on our radar. And it also, we had some public comment, so I wanted to just turn it to Carl and give you a chance to ask, why is this coming to us and what is the process?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. So the proposal before you is to initiate a text amendment for battery energy storage systems, data centers, and digital asset retrieval. Battery energy storage centers are often several buildings that contain batteries. They're often connected to solar farms or wind farms, but increasingly we're seeing them as standalone units. So not connected to a power plant, but connected to the grid, so they can collect from the grid when power usage is low and then feed back into the grid when usage is higher. Right now, it's not clear in the zoning code if they're permitted or not. They may be permitted as a major utility, but we don't have any use-specific standards related to these battery energy storage systems unless they're connected with a solar facility. We have received several inquiries from energy storage companies. In fact, we just received one on Monday from an energy storage company that's interested in locating in the county. So that's why we're bringing that forward. Then two similar in character land uses, data centers, and digital asset retrieval. Digital asset retrieval, also called crypto mining or Bitcoin mining, that's brought forward because those are also an increasingly common use in unincorporated areas. There was a pretty high profile case in neighboring Jefferson County last year where a crypto mining operation was proposed, and that's why we're bringing that forward to you. Just for initiation, we're not intending to write a text amendment right this moment. We're looking to launch a community conversation. We'll have a work session on this in the future after staff has done some more research.
We did have some public comment that was here in time, I believe was in time for the packet, and then some that was not. Can I forward that to make sure that it gets in front of staff as they begin those conversations?
Absolutely.
What is a likely timeline about this? Since this is just the very beginning of even educating ourselves on the land use.
It's difficult to say at this time since our timeline often depends on what other applications are coming forward and what our workload looks like, but I anticipate it will be in the coming months once we get a work session scheduled before you.
So in terms of the availability for the public to weigh in, what would that look like?
There would likely be, as the text amendment process goes forward, it would be on a planning commission agenda. There would be an opportunity for public comment then. If approved by the planning commission, it would come before you, and there would also be a chance for public comment.
And people can provide comment now on any item that they
Absolutely.
want, and that can help inform staff as they begin to develop the regulations. And I want to just reiterate for folks, these are regulations that we would want to be in place to not necessarily promote them, but to make sure that our community is safe and protected. Right now, they could potentially happen without any regulation.
And within this process, we could decide to limit what area they might
Agreed. Yes.
available for, or limit them completely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Just I have a big learning curve on some of these uses you have here. I also don't have a lot of love, but I realize that I have a lot yet to learn about it. When you mentioned that it might fall under the use as a major utility, does that still fall under our zoning process, or is that something then that the state preempts like they do other utilities?
I'm not entirely sure yet how the state regulates these uses. That's something that will be part of our research process. Major utility is a land use classified in the zoning code. It's a conditional use in the ag districts, and it's permitted in the industrial districts, I believe. But we don't have any use-specific standards attached to it. So if a CUP application were received for a battery energy storage system use, we might consider it as a major utility and bring it forward. So if one were to come in tomorrow, that's how it would be processed. We don't have any use-specific standards for it, though, at this time.
Will staff come back to us in a, I think, reasonably short period of time and on whether or not we would need to have a moratorium until we had regulations in place? I don't know if that's where we are, but I'm just curious if we will get some guidance from what staff is comfortable with.
I think we'd have to talk to legal counsel. Generally, we can't do a moratorium without a pretty extensive dive into what we can prohibit and not prohibit it. But if that's something we can, we generally, it's pretty rare for us to do a moratorium on a use.
Right. And I'm curious if we'll end up with a recommendation for one text amendment that covers all three of these uses, two of them all of them being a little bit different from each other.
I don't think we know at this point, so I think staff needs to do that work and then bring back a proposal to you, and that'll be the value of a work session.
Okay, but one initiation would then cover that even if we ended up splitting them later?
That's my
I believe
understanding.
so.
Okay, thank you for letting me pester you about that. Commissioners, do you have any questions related to this item?
Nope, I think you covered it.
All right, thank you. This is now a public agenda item. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this?
My name is Gene Dorsey. I live in Lawrence, Kansas. I think assigning the task of rewriting and/or revising zoning and land use regulations prior to establishing a policy regarding whether these uses will be permitted is premature and an inefficient use of resources. I suggest instead this task of investigation be assigned to the Sustainability Management Department. The department's focus is currently on mitigating and adapting to climate change and conserving open spaces, among other things. Additionally, the city of Lawrence has an industrial park of more than 150 acres, more suited to such uses than farmland, so this should be coordinated with them. The battery storage facilities like to be near major substations, and there's one located right next to the industrial park. Once a proposed policy is formulated, then public discussions could be held, and only after a policy is agreed to should detailed procedures be assigned to planning and zoning to develop. I also suggest that planning and zoning forward to the economic development group any inquiries they get on these things so they can follow up. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Michael Allman with Sustainability Action Network. I urge you not even consider permitting data centers, whether for AI, for cryptocurrency, for cute cat videos, whatever, here in Douglas County. A conditional use permit is inadequate for regulating them. They should be in the zoning use table simply as disallowed. Industry literature has lots of info on data centers. I'm referencing here an article from States Newsrooms titled "States Rethink Data Centers as Energy Hogs That Strain the Grid." Data centers consume huge amounts of electricity and water, yet employ few people. As energy hogs, they burden the power grid and substations and undermine energy conservation and renewable energy goals. As automated businesses, they are not primary employers, which Douglas County desperately needs, having very little staff. With their enormous electricity use comes heat load, which takes volumes of water to cool. And climate heating already constrains precipitation, while western Kansas drought reduces eastern Kansas stream flows. This article has quite a bit in here. For example, in a number of states, growth of the industry is raising alarms over the reliability and affordability of local electric grids. Nationwide data center subsidies were costing state and local governments about $2 million per job created. Please don't waste staff time or taxpayer time and money on a study. Simply list data centers as prohibited. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment on this item? Is there anyone online? Okay.
So we have Melanie Kaufman online. Melanie, you are in the panel and able to provide your public comment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Thank you. Commissioners, thank you so much for pulling this to item from the consent agenda. In the first place, I don't believe that it belonged in the consent agenda, but nevertheless, I really appreciate the opportunity. In regard to the battery energy storage systems, I think the community has just been through a years-long discussion. I think, I hope you've heard our opinions on that. I don't believe that this belongs in the unincorporated areas of Douglas County in the zoning areas that are indicated. Learning from the CWEX project, we were told we had to have regulations in place, and it drug out into a very long discussion where they were not even considered for banning. And at this point, I would very seriously encourage you to just please ban them at this point. As I mentioned, we're tired of this. We're weary of it. They belong in an industrial zoned, a minimum area, not in unincorporated areas of Douglas County, for the reasons of noise, and these ion batteries combust, and we're not prepared for fires, as you've heard before. So please, don't permit them, disallow, prohibit, and thanks for hearing us out.
Thank you. Sarah, do we have anyone else online? Okay. Without closing public comment, bring it back to commissioners. Do you have any thoughts or questions in addition for staff? Commissioner Kelly?
No, I just want to underline that this is to initiate a text amendment. We're not making any zoning decisions today. I try to remain curious about these things and understand more. I understand that some feel like there may be a different path, but this is the path that we typically take with zoning regulations. And if it comes up that this is not the right way to do it, or that we need to look at other avenues to engage, we've done that on other text amendments. It doesn't necessarily have to just lie with one department. It can rely, we can get input from other departments for sure. But I'm supportive of the initiation of the text amendment. I appreciate Commissioner Willie pulling it from our agenda, because we did receive quite a bit of email about it. I answered a lot of those emails, just letting people know that this is just to initiate a conversation. We're not making any decisions on land use regulations tonight.
Thank you. And I suspect as the staff has some of those conversations, that these three uses may end up kind of spreading out quite a bit in terms of what their community value might be or might not be. So I think that's at least the digital asset retrieval, which I think the rest of us would call Bitcoin mining or something similar, is, I think, an international discussion even. I think some countries have weighed in on this, both pro and con. So I think there'll be some conversations that I'll be curious to learn about, but also will do quite a bit of reading on my own too. So thank you for standing in the gap to, as we're starting to get some inquiries, to bring it so that we are somewhat prepared when that, if we were to get more serious inquiries on that behalf, to see where we want to go with it. So thank you for being here. Commissioner?
Motion to initiate a text amendment to the zoning and land use regulations for the unincorporated territory of Douglas County, Kansas, to add battery energy storage systems, data centers, and digital asset retrieval as conditional uses in certain zoning districts and develop standards.
I do have a question on that. Would it always be a conditional use, or we look at other zoning options also?
The intent would be to have it as a conditional use because these are rather intense land uses. But as we go through this conversation, that may change.
Yeah, and if it were to be added to a table to, as a disallowed use, this action allows us to initiate that conversation.
Thank you. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. That brings us to general public comment. And if anyone would like to come up and give general public comment, this would be the time for that. Do we have anyone in the room who'd like to give public comment?
My name is Dr. Justin Spees. On July 29th, 2024, LJ World wrote an article called Lawrence Public Commenter Files Ethics Complaints Against DA and Former Deputy DA in Connection with Costume Mocking Incident. A controversial Lawrence Public Commenter has filed complaints with the Kansas Attorney Disciplinary Office against the Douglas County District Attorney and her former deputy over a June incident where the deputy dressed as the man and the DA appeared to point and laugh at the costume. The complaint was filed on July 11th with the Kansas ODA by Justin Spees, a regular commenter at area government meetings who has filed several lawsuits against government entities for viewpoint discrimination and also has been ejected from several meetings over conduct concerns. Spees on Sunday sent notice of the complaints in an email to the Journal World. The complaint alleges that DA Suzanne Valdez and her former deputy DA Joshua Seiden committed multiple violations of the KRPC set for attorneys by the Kansas Supreme Court. The complaint was filed in response to Seiden having dressed up in Spees' quote, signature identifiable style on June 21st while Seiden was working as the deputy DA at the Douglas County Judicial and Law Enforcement Center, according to the complaint. Quote, instead of recognizing how unprofessional, mean, and inappropriate this all was, Ms. Valdez is going along with, encouraging, and ratifying Mr. Seiden's public mockery of me by laughing and pointing at Mr. Seiden as he strutted around the courthouse entrance, impersonating and mocking me, Spees said in the complaint. In a statement to the Journal World, Valdez on Monday disavowed the actions of her former deputy district attorney and said she took action in response to Seiden's mockery of Spees. Quote, the unprofessional incident involving Mr. Seiden's mockery of Justin Spees lasted mere seconds, Valdez said in an email to the Journal World. My response was that of shock and surprise. I dealt with this incident swiftly once I had time to do so that day. Mr. Seiden's misconduct was not ratified by me, and that is why he is no longer with my office. The incident was caught on surveillance video and showed Seiden exiting the DA's offices wearing a dreadlock wig, a t-shirt, hat, and sunglasses while carrying a cell phone as a prop and interacting with court security. Valdez followed Seiden out of the offices and at one point appears to point and laugh at Seiden in his costume. The DA's office confirmed the Monday after the incident that Seiden had resigned from his position as deputy DA, but the office declined to explain the reasons for his departure. Spees specifies in the complaint that Valdez and Seiden violated 4 KRPC misconduct standards. Spees also alleges Valdez and Seiden violated additional standards set by the KRPC, including that, quote, an attorney is required to act at all times, both professionally and personally in conformity with the standards established by the KRPC, the rules relating to discipline of attorneys and the attorney's oath of office, and that a lawyer should strive to exemplify the legal profession's ideals of public service. So as I suspected all along, Seiden was given the option to resign or be fired. And also I want to know, my sign here says women have more balls than Patrick too. Couple of meetings in April and May, you said I had to remove the sign. I could not speak anymore and even had me arrested for it. Why can I have it right now?
3 minutes. All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment, general public comment?
Related to Ms. Valdez and her behavior on that day, it also includes your Douglas County deputies, your courthouse security folks. They were taking pictures and enjoying the game too. On the 23rd of July, I visited the Douglas County Judicial Center to attend the graduation for somebody from the behavioral health court. That person was dead in my hands a year ago, and she's graduated behavioral health court this past week. 3 of us brought her back from an overdose, and now she's finding success. No thanks to the people that revoked her voucher for her housing this past month and decided to tell her she was going to be homeless again right at the end of her treatment, which for many people would throw them right back into the throes of abuse. I know that we have some people in the mental health community and that kind of work in the audience. I would hope they would pay some real close attention to that situation. They can find out who that was if they'd like. But let's get back to your deputies. On the 23rd, I went to that graduation, and while I was there, I witnessed individuals bypassing court security. When I questioned deputies about that, the quote from Deputy Riles was 100% legit. So I questioned that, and I requested the courthouse security guidelines from the sheriff department. And to my surprise, well, not really to my surprise, but to their surprise, it actually says that all persons should pass through the court security checkpoint. There's no exceptions to that. The people that have access to the courthouse without passing through that checkpoint have key card access to the south door. Nobody at the sheriff's department wants to respond as to whether we're going to adjust our security procedures. I replied to Vance Collins' email asking him if, now that we understand the policies a little better, if there were going to be some adjustments, and nobody wants to make those adjustments. While you guys continually try to make this man here and myself the threat that you should be worried about, your deputies are continually exposing you to the potential of a mass shooter inside the courthouse. One of those people that bypass security is Rusty Burton, the owner of Free State Security. 2 years ago, I documented this man in a very unstable state in the community building, violating the contract he was operating under, being armed in that community building when the contract said that he should not have been armed. He was relieved from that contract, yet today he bypasses security in the Judicial Center. That's scary. That's a real concern.
Do we have anyone else who'd like to give general public comment? Sarah, do we have anyone online? Okay, that will close general public comment and come back to our regular agenda. So our first item is an administrative item. I believe, Jill, are you going to kick us off? And then we'll have some folks also from the chamber, or is this Sarah?
Sure, I can just introduce that we've got representatives from the EDC and chamber here, and they had a request in 2024 related to the DDC, the Diversified Douglas County Small Business Loan, and they're here, they provided you with information, and they're here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, any first comments before we have public comment?
Well, maybe a couple of questions for our EDC partners. Come on up. So my recollection was that when we put this in the commissioner's budget to release it, there was discussion of matching dollars to go with this $105,000 budget allocation. Can you talk about where, you gave us some notes on, it's in our packet, on where that match is, but where do the dollars for that match come from?
Finding my file. So the dollars from the in-kind analysis. Well, as it describes it, it has various percentages that reflect our funding, whether it's private investment, city investment, and county investment. Each of those all contributed in various ways to the development of the DDC.
So So what I heard you just say was that that came from the match comes from county dollars, city dollars, and
I'll
other
let Steve
fundraising?
Talk about those specific details.
Yeah, I think, we do have funding from all three sources. The private funds raised through the Rising Together campaign, the monies from the county, and also the monies from the city. We have some ability to allocate those within the different portions. So we are dedicating monies from the capital campaign, the private dollars is what we have been dedicating to our contributions to the to the DDC, the revolving loan fund for minority entrepreneurs.
So there's 105,000 from the city and 105,000 from the county. Is there 105,000 from your private donations?
To this point, we've put in 60.
Okay.
And have monies allocated that we're continuing to go on an annual basis to put into it.
Okay.
We had allocated a certain amount of money over the 5 years and are proceeding in that, but we have not got to that amount yet, but we're putting it on an annual basis.
Okay. Thank you.
So 60,000 allocated to the loan fund, and then also the staff support. Is that correct?
The $60,000 is specifically for the loan fund.
Right. So in addition to that, you've also
We're also, it's
supported
coming
staffing.
out of the more general fund, if you will. But Josh's time since his joining the chamber has been pretty much dedicated to the entrepreneurial space and working on the DDC and all the support mechanisms aligned with it. And I've also had a considerable portion of my time, certainly not as much as Josh, that have come out of more the general fund. But the monies for the DDC are specifically from the Rising Together capital campaign. And also the monies that we have received from either the capital campaign, also the contribution from the city of Lawrence, and it would be the same with your contribution. There's no money that comes out of that for any sort of administration. That all is loan fund money. And that's the way that we've planned it, and that's the way we're operating. It's all available for loans to the qualifying entrepreneurs.
I don't have any other questions at the moment. Commissioner, do you?
Well, one of the things that I feel like we're pointing to, and it's getting there, and I appreciate the work that's been done, is that this is a goal of economic development across Douglas County. Can you talk about how this fund will help improve the economic development of Douglas County and is stitched in with the goals of the EDC?
Well, in my view, and some of this is from self-study, and a lot of it came from some of the work that was done as we were following up on the Douglas County health plan, where at that time it was Ryan Rains and I were involved in the group that was working on poverty issues. On poverty issues. And one of the things that seemed very clear in those conversations was the fact that entrepreneurship for the minority community was a key avenue for them to advance themselves, to put them in a much better situation, with the idea that families who had that opportunity, it reflected in the following generation, and you were able to break the cycle of poverty. And so out of that work, there was a lot of conversation about who was in a position to do that. And at that point, we determined that we would go ahead and step into that space. And that was a precedent for it becoming one of the goals and one of the platforms or the pillars within the Rising Together campaign was to set up the minority revolving loan fund to support minority. And ultimately, we'd like to extend it also to women-owned businesses, but we are starting with a minority loan fund, and that's what we're working on now. So I think it's very much a part of the overall economic development plan, specifically to address the shortcomings or the inadequacies of support and opportunities for minority people in the community, and it's an effort to try to lift all ships as opposed to just a few. And this is a way that a lot of the work that I've seen and others have pointed out has been a way that you can do that by encouraging people to start their own businesses or run their own businesses is an opportunity to do that.
When we met in July, this was during our budget time, we we had heard there wasn't a lot of loan activity. And Josh, I know you've shared with me there has been more activity. This might be a good time to share with the community those same results.
Thank you. No, there has been a lot of activity, even noted in our regular reports to the EDC and other boards. To date, we've had 4 applications, 3 approved at full funding. 2 of those, in addition to that, are women-owned operations. 1 has been referred to get technical assistance, so we're providing some technical assistance to get to ensure their success as they go forward. And by comparison to some of the similar programs statewide, Empower, offered through Network Kansas, we're keeping up pace. They've been around a little longer and had some and had a bit of a head start, but as it stands now, some of those numbers are pretty equivalent. So we're really excited about that. I am aware presently of 5, no less than 5 entrepreneurs who are in process, either have expressed interest, have been referred to the SBDC, are working on their business plans and cash projections, all of the steps to submit their completed application. And there may be some already in the works that I'm not aware of that the SBDC, due to its operations, are keeping confidential until application time is going. One of our more recent exciting prospects is we have developed a work agreement for Spanish language services to make sure all of our materials are accessible in Spanish to the Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs in Douglas County. So we're really thrilled about what that can do to open up that activity. And that's the basic rundown of where we're at now. Any other additional follow-up on that? No.
I don't have any other questions at this time. Commissioner, you ready to go to public comment?
I'm sorry.
Going to public comment.
Yeah.
Public comment. Thank you.
All right. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item tonight?
I have
Anyone
someone online.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen, you're in the panel and can provide public comment.
Okay, I got to click that unmute. No video. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
But you don't see me.
No, no.
And is that the way it's supposed to be? I'm new to this system.
Yep, that's generally how it works.
Okay, excellent. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. And I got to say that I see all these wealthy type guys in there talking about ending the cycle of poverty as an economic plan. A whole lot of activity to these guys equates 4 applications. You know, having been in the world of public welfare, 4 applications, that's like every hour, isn't it? Excuse the sarcasm. At any rate, as I look at the bill that they've sent to you, nowhere in this does it state how many hours they have worked or what the cost is per hour. As I'm looking at this, it just gives their first name. Ryan, 70%, Steve, Bonnie, Kathy. But it gives a dollar amount, and it doesn't say how many hours of work took place or how much they're charging per hour. I find that very curious from the Chamber of Commerce that they can't keep track of money like this. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online who'd like to give public comment? Okay, with that, we're closing it, bringing it back to the commission for thoughts, questions, motions.
Thank you for coming and sharing information with us. I think this is a program that we'd like to see expand and grow. And so I'm glad our media partners are here. This would be a good one to think about writing an article or something about to make sure that we are getting the word out about the opportunities that are there. We'd like to see that tick up. We'd like to see the chamber's contribution continue to tick up, but I do understand that some of that is the cost of actually administering the loans, providing some of that support for that. So, yeah, I'm supportive of this and appreciate the work of bringing back and delaying while we gathered some more information on this item.
I'm hugely supportive of entrepreneurs, and I recognize it takes a variety of programs and a variety of avenues for funding and technical support and just community support. So I have been excited about the project from its beginning, and I was glad for fellow commissioners to ask questions, and so we have an idea about what the loan is, what that fund is doing. I'm supportive of these are dollars that we had built into our budget last summer for this calendar year. We're just releasing those funds. These are not new funds. So Commissioner?
Motion to approve one-time funding request for Diversified Douglas County Minority-Owned Business Loan Program in the amount of $105,000.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for being here. Brings us to our next item, and this is with zoning and codes. This is a special event permit request from Burning Barrel. And Carl, is this for you?
Yep, I'm going to move Carl into the panel.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is a special event permit request from the Burning Barrel LLC for an outdoor concert on September 7th. So a little bit about special event permits first. Most special event permits are approved administratively. It's pretty uncommon that one comes before you to be considered, but in the zoning code, we have specific criteria that need to be met in order for that special event to be processed administratively. Since this event has more than 500, or excuse me, up to 500 attendees plan to attend, your approval is needed because the most that can attend and be approved administratively is 100 guests. This is the first special event permit for an outdoor concert to appear before the commission since 2017 for the Luke Bryan Farm Tour. So a little bit about the proposal before you. The concert is set to go from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday, September 7th, 2024. They plan to open the parking lot at 11, and then parking and all of the guests will leave by midnight. The concert is known as the Prairie Crawl. Up to 500 attendees are expected to attend, and the event will include live music, food and alcoholic beverage vendors, and a craft market. Alcoholic beverage sales are expected to end by 11 p.m. The music acts include the Local Honeys, the Rose Line, and Western Cuts. The applicant has rented 10 portable toilets and has obtained environmental health approval to use those portable toilets. They'll be providing 250 parking spaces, 10 of which will be ADA accessible. The parking will be on a mowed grass field on the adjacent property, and parking attendants will be on site to ensure parking is orderly. The property is located at 292 North 2100 Road. That's 3 miles west of Lecompton. It consists of 2 properties right next to each other. The property where the event will be taking place is a 30-acre property zoned Ag 1, owned by Brian Strecker and Kristen Werner. The property is developed with a residence and agritourism business known as the Burning Barrel. The property adjacent is 10 acres and zoned Ag 2. That property will be used for parking. There are no buildings there currently. We do have a notarized letter on file from that property owner saying they're okay with the parking taking place there. Access for this property is from a paved county road, so we don't have any concerns here about dust, and the surrounding land uses include agriculture and rural residences. This is a site plan submitted by the applicant. This area right here is where the parking is set to take place. The concert itself will be taking place on this property here, with the stage being that area in orange. The portable toilets are in purple there. As far as comments, staff has reached out to impacted agencies. We heard back from 3 of them, the City of Lecompton, KDOT, and Shawnee County Planning. They all responded that they had no concerns. We haven't heard from any other agencies about this. We did receive a phone call from a member of the public just this morning to express opposition about the proposed concert and just expressed some opposition about the business in general and provided some complaints, and we'll be looking into those. And with that, staff is recommending approval with the conditions listed here and in the report in your packet. So approval is for a single-day event on September 7th with parking beginning at 11 and ending at midnight. Proof of all necessary permits and registrations must be submitted to us before the event begins. Lighting has to be directed downward and away from neighboring properties. All of the parking has to take place on private property, not within the right-of-way. The ADA parking spaces need to be clearly marked. They have to have a minimum of 10 ADA spaces, and all signage needs to comply with the zoning code. With that, I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is present with us in the room today.
Okay, would the applicant care to address us in any way, or should just wait for questions? All right, because I will have some questions. So the fire department for that area is CFD1, and you reached out to them and didn't hear back?
We did reach out to them. I just heard from them this week because the applicant was wondering if they needed to have an ambulance on site or a fire truck on site. What the fire department told us is that that's generally a requirement of their insurer, not a requirement from zoning or anything like that. So that's between them, the fire department, and their insurer.
Okay, and I ask in part because I did staff the Luke Bryan concert as part of the fire department. And so just that's kind of what I have in my head in terms of what the needs might be. So I'll turn to our applicant and ask, have you talked to your insurance about if they have any requirements about either fire or ambulance presence?
The insurance company, we're getting a single day.
Is your green light on?
Push. It's green.
Okay,
I'm just
thank you.
The insurance company, we're getting a single day rider for the event, and it's through Nationwide. And they asked if we were going to have fires or fireworks, and no to both of those. And then if we have a designated smoking area, which we do, it's on the map there in a very low. It's a very small area. We don't allow smoking on our property during our regular restaurant season as a farm-to-table restaurant anywhere on the property. If people smoke or vape, we ask them to go out to the exit gate. So, but we're doing it because it's a concert and people are probably going to smoke cigarettes. So, but they have a spot. And the fire department, I spoke with them, and it sounds like they got back to you, but they didn't get back to me. He said he was going to look into it and see what other events similar to this in the area had done in the past. That's the fire chief, and that was an email last week, and I haven't heard back. So.
It's possible that is one difference. I think there may have been fireworks or something related to the other concert. Okay, so that in terms of traffic, are there any? I know it's a paved road, so that takes away a lot of concerns there. Is there any conversation that has to happen with Sheriff's Department for additional oversight?
I did reach out to the sheriff's office, and I did reach out to Public Works, and we haven't received any concerns.
Okay. Have you made any allowance for Uber being able to find the property? This was also an issue with the Luke Bryan concert, is folks Ubered out there and then were expecting to be able to Uber back, and no one would come or didn't know how to find it. So, or they didn't know how to say where they were. It was, it drew things much.
It wasn't a property like no Google Maps. Couldn't find that.
It should have been they should have been able to find it.
It's like in a field?
Yeah, it was in a farm field. The reason I say that is that in terms of the ending time, ending at 11 and the parking done by midnight, that was one of the things that really drug out the process, was people being able to leave the property because they didn't drive themselves, which is not a bad thing. But I don't know what conversations can be had ahead of time, but just kind of have that on your radar.
Could you pull up the map really quick? Maybe, and what I'm really wanting to do and to advertise this to our ticket holders is set up a program with Uber or another company like that to have prepaid agreements so that folks can park in Topeka, Kansas City, Lawrence, wherever they're coming from. Because we have folks that come out to the restaurant and use Uber all the time. And they're staying in Lawrence or Topeka or even in Kansas City because it's 40 minutes from Kansas City. So, and people like to come out and have drinks and then not drive out from the country to the city. So if you see the entrance for emergency vehicles here, on the east side of the property, and then there's the main entrance into the parking lot on the west side of the property, the other, is that not very clearly labeled? The green line on the far, keep going, yeah, there. So for entrance, that will be the place, that's going to be the place where people can drive in, and we're having traffic directed for ticket taking and all that. But as far as the evening's end, we are going to, there is a clear mode walkway path all the way across the front of the property there, just basically on the line of the red event space block. And people, we are going to allow Uber drivers and other paid vehicles to come in the emergency exit after the event is over, because that's a parking lot right there. That's where everybody parks for dinners at the farm. So we can fit 150 vehicles over there. We're choosing not to do that for public parking for the event because everything's taking place on the west side of the building. But after the show, when there are people that are wanting to leave and take paid vehicles, we are going to allow them to use that parking lot as well.
Okay, thank you for having thought that through and answering my question.
Sure.
What's your weather contingencies? Is it a rain or shine event?
It is rain or shine, no refunds. We don't have tents. We're not going to have big tents. We could not put up enough tents to protect people from those elements. There will be a pop-up tent on the deck over the band performers to protect them and their equipment. In the case that we get rain, I'm sure everything will be okay. But if we get a wild storm like we do, it's going to be a rain out date. And with the consolation that tickets are only $35, and if that happens, people that are attending an outdoor concert in Kansas would probably understand. And if that happens, and we have 500 people out there and they all have to leave at once, then I do have a staff of 6 for tickets and parking attendance, and we will, thank you for asking, we'll have to have an emergency evacuation plan, like to show people where they can leave under both exits if everybody has to leave at once. I didn't think of that.
And one last question. Have you had conversations proactively with neighbors about that this is going on? Have you reached out to them and offered tickets if they want them or something to ease that?
Brian had that idea, and I think it's a lovely idea because when we get people out to our dinners that are local, it really means a lot to us. We love being able to support our community with our food, and that they love to be there to support our business. We sent out the letters as required within 1,000 feet, and I had one neighbor text me and jokingly say, "You need to give me tickets or I'm going to show up at that meeting." So that was really the only feedback I got. I've spoken with two other neighbors who are really excited about it, but I haven't spoken with anybody else.
Those are all my questions, except you're Kristen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner, I hogged the mic.
Thank you. My question is for Carl. Carl, thanks for your report. You listed the 3 bands that will be playing. Is that part of our regulations that we have any say on which music performs?
It's not. It could be heavy death metal and it would be processed the exact same.
Okay, just making sure there wasn't any confusion. I've never seen us actually put up who the bands were, so thank you for that.
Very detailed.
All right, this is a public comment item. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make comment here? Come on up.
Tall, so, okay. My name is Sherry Hammersky, and we are actually neighbors immediately to the north of them. And as I have stood here before, when the Burning Barrel was first applying for their permit, I have stated then, and I'm reiterating that I have a medical condition which eliminates me to have any gluten whatsoever penetrate my body. This is through consumption or environmental. While some of you may not think that gluten particles can travel, that simply is not true. You add the country wind, usually it goes from south to north, and it's usually very strong out there. The probability becomes even stronger and higher. Due to the intensity of my condition, I have actually had to end an employment with a company due to another company coming in, buildings down from them because it was a dog food company and there was gluten in their product. However, this is my home and it should be a safe spot. I can't stress enough that this isn't a conversation about inconvenience but it's a medical issue that can actually cause cancer. So with that, I say, if the particles of gluten penetrate across our property or in our home, and I must leave my home to accommodate so I do not get sick or have to call the sheriff, processes will be put in motion to ensure my health is not harmed due to this event or events to follow. According to Chapter 7 of the Official County Code of Douglas County, Kansas, 7-101, nuisance defined and prohibited. It shall be unlawful for any person to permit, cause, kept, or maintain any nuisance within Douglas County. Anything which is dangerous to or violates the health, peace, or welfare of any citizen of Douglas County, Kansas, is hereby deemed and declared to be a nuisance. Just to end this and go on record, we have actually looked other ways with several lines that has been blurred with their original conditional use permit. If this is pushed through, I hope that the guidelines and Chapter 7 Official County Code of Douglas County, Kansas will be strictly enforced. We are only trying to protect my health and well-being. I do want to make one additional comment regarding the smoking and Kirsten's comment.
Is there anyone else who'd like to give general public comment? Come on up.
Hello, my name's Paul Hammerski. I'm the homeowner to the north, along with my wife that just spoke. As for the gluten issues, before you guys blew us off on it, saying that it couldn't reach our property, well, it has. But fortunate for them, it's either been that my wife hasn't been there or that we were in the process of leaving, so that didn't affect her. I mean, we were in the process of doing something that we had scheduled. So it does come to our property, and with them adding more vendors there, not knowing what they're going to present, that's a big issue. The other issue I have with the concert is there's a comment in there that they're going to mow a grass trail around their property for people to walk, which is great. But we have an electric fence. There's going to be 500 people there possibly drinking. Who's going to be liable when somebody touches our fence and gets hurt, or gets onto our property and gets hurt? Is that under my insurance? Are they covering it? The trash concerns me. I know they're going to do their best to try to keep it there, but the wind out there is going to blow. Who's going to clean my property up? The dB levels. Is there a county ordinance that the dB levels can only be so loud? What's the dB levels that's acceptable for property owners? If there is an issue with the gluten, is there a direct number we can call? I mean, your ordinance say that it can't happen, that it can't. So who do we get a hold of to stop it? Or are we just condemned to have to go through it? And then after hearing about the traffic issue, I'm concerned about if we are out and about and they've got 500 cars in there, how much is that going to back up that road for people getting down that road, of the concerns of the drinking and people leaving. So you guys need to really, especially if it continues and goes bigger and grows bigger, there's other aspects to look at. I appreciate your time for listening. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment? Either in person or do we have anyone online? Okay, a closing public comment, bringing it back to the commission. Commissioner?
Carl, can you address, I mean, we have lots of events that I think could be perceived as as a nuisance or dangerous. Can you talk a little bit about how our regulations line up with that part of the code?
There are some inconsistencies in the code in this regard within the zoning code. It says in the special event permit section that it cannot generate a nuisance, but in the nuisance code, it says that an operation that, or a use in normal operation with zoning permission that generates noise is not considered a nuisance. So this item before you is seeking zoning permission to make noise, essentially.
That would be why the condition of the hours, because otherwise we have noise regulations that would come into play.
Yes.
And it's clear in the regs on, I mean, some of the questions that were asked by the neighboring property are in the regulations, I believe, things like cleaning up property and things like that. Do you want to take a minute and address any of those? I think I got cleaning property, traffic issues, DB level. I mean, my understanding is the purpose of this process is to try to mitigate those impacts to the best that we can, also recognizing that the property owner has the ability to do something that's unique and not something we're doing on a regular basis. So I want to give you an opportunity there.
So with past special event permits that have come before you, there's often been a condition attached that's required site remediation, restoring the site to its original condition. With this particular special event, we're not as concerned about that because it is the applicant's own property where this is taking place. They live there. So it's in their best interest to either clean it up, or they've said they'd like to hold an event like this in the future. Maybe they want to leave certain infrastructure in place to hold an event like this in the future. As far as cleaning up trash, that's not addressed in the zoning code, but that would be between them and their neighbor.
Is there anything about trash pickup that should be a condition in what's before us? Do we have a precedent for that?
It's already part of the code, so generally we don't reiterate code and conditions.
Got it. I don't have any other questions for staff, I don't think.
So first I want to appreciate neighbors coming out and every special use permit and conditional use permit I've ever experienced usually has some concerns about the impacts it has on others. And I think the process that we go through here is to hear as much as we can and mitigate as much as we can, because there's a competing value of a property owner having the ability to do what they would like to do on their property. And you know, I understand a neighbor wanting to decide how someone else can use their property, but I think that's the reason for this process, is that it allows us to understand what those impacts are and mitigate it as best we can. There may be impacts that we certainly can't mitigate, but this at least gives notice to the neighbors that this is a one-time event that's happening. So I make a motion to approve the special event permit request for an outdoor concert on September 7th, 2024 at 292 North 2100 Road with the conditions listed in the staff memo.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I do also want to reiterate, I do appreciate educating us on what other impacts could be there. We may look at something in the future as far as what we can measure or mitigate. That brings us to our next item, and that is also with administration. It's Lawrence Douglas County Public Health as part of our outside agency funding.
Commissioners, I'm going to start this off, but Bob Transky is going to speak in greater detail about the request. The one thing I wanted to make sure I note is that the total additional amount on the briefing sheet, I made a math error. The total additional amount that is being proposed added with the addition of the zero suicide coordination that you spoke about a couple weeks ago, and what's being discussed today, the addition of the APR, and that new total is $54,833. I was moving too quickly and made an math.
Can you
math
repeat
error.
that, actually?
54,833.
So it is less than what was in our memo. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, just slightly. I apologize. But Bob's going to talk briefly about what's being proposed in the partnerships.
So the first part of this is something that we brought to you in June, and we're amending the agreement with Public Health. What we didn't bring to you in June, and we didn't bring to you in the budget process, which I would imagine maybe you have some questions, is the opportunity to add an APRN to our efforts to meet the needs of our unhoused neighbors and people who are struggling, who are reluctant or unable to come to the clinic at Heartland Health, or resistant to going to LMH or an LMH provider. There is a dimension of complexity and need to meet people where they are as we do this homeless outreach and homeless response work, to be able to, address people's medical concerns, some of which are more serious than something that a paramedic can do. So we are at a moment where there's an opportunity for collaboration, as we have been striving to come up with these shared funding braids between the city and what the Homeless Solutions Division is working on, what the county could bring, and what Lawrence Douglas County Public Health could bring to deploy an advanced practice nurse practitioner for this work. This is something that was actually originally envisioned in the mobile integrated health model when that project was proposed several years ago. There were, at that time, conversations between LMH Health and Fire and Medical about partnering on that project. We have, the county has worked with Burt Nash and Heartland to try to integrate nursing and to leverage grant opportunities. So I think this is an opportunity in the season in which we find ourselves to take a big step forward in a way that is sustainable, would not require funds beyond what we have budgeted. Jill, Burt Nash, all of our partners have met to take a look at how we could use existing resources and maybe redirect some of those to be able to make progress on this issue. If we were in a position 3 months ago where we are today, we would have built this into the budget process, but we weren't. We now have commitment from all the parties, and we'd like to keep moving forward because this is really something we've been trying to work on for several years. I also wanted to make commissioners aware that I think there's a good chance that we could leverage existing grant dollars for the county's portion of this for 2024, and we will be reaching out to do that. So this is another ask. If we can't get the grant dollars, can we redirect some of the behavioral health projects funds that will be unspent? We also have talked with partners. There are a number of projects. The ACT team is one, the mobile response team is another, where because of staff turnover, the personnel costs are not as high for this year. And so there is capacity to be able to work on this while we are doing the other things, doing the pieces. Does that make sense?
You mentioned the possibility for grant funding, and that we would look for that first, or there are existing possibilities that might be able to be allocated towards that. What's the timeline when you would know if these are new dollars that need to be requested and drawn from our budget, or if you might be have some grant?
I think a couple of weeks. I mean, I was planning to reach out tomorrow on that, so.
But Bob, it's the existing grant with Sunflower. It's just making sure that they're comfortable using it in this way, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have redirected some of those funds for different purposes over the 3-year course of the grant. This was actually a piece of our original proposal, was to add nursing to support the ACT team. So this falls within the scope of and the mission of that grant, or the purpose of that grant, to promote integration among partners.
How many people serve on the team, or how many people deploy at a time for mobile integrated health? So adding the licensed public, or the LPN, will that be a third person, or will that replace one of the 2 members?
It would create more flexible configuration into how that team is deployed and when that team is deployed. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it would allow this position to go out with that team and spend a portion of their time with that team, is the way I understand it. Division Chief Joels could not be here. He's traveling, and otherwise I'd have him here talking. But I know that Jonathan and Chief Joels have had several discussions about what this configuration would look like. And what we outlined in terms of the percentage of time in the memo is just a first thought. It could look different. It could mean, based on how things go forward for the rest of this year and into next year, that maybe it turns out they do need more time they do need more of a full-time APRN. Maybe they need a little less, but this is just where initial discussions are. And Jonathan, any other discussions that you've had with Kevin that you want to share? But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure that it is the most efficient configuration so that if it's a two-person job, we don't send three because we're not doing probably a lot of heavy lifting. This isn't an emergency response or a lift assist or anything. This is conversations to work past what are our immediate needs and what are kind of the longer term needs. I am very supportive of having a nurse as a possibility within that team. I can see a huge need for that. I think we've nowhere found yet the capacity for the need in our community. I think some of our agencies are kind of slow to adopt this or need some more training on what the guidelines are for who can be signed up for this program, but there's a huge need. So I just want to make sure that that we have an eye towards efficiency with all of that, because I think it will be all hands on deck. And I want to make sure that we're getting our value for dollars too.
My understanding is that we do not, and I don't want to speak for Kevin, but in the conversations I've heard, it's a question of who are the two that respond to this incident or to this call. And another advantage of this shared person is the ability for the nurse to be stationed in clinic at LDC Public Health. So it could be a follow-up the next day or follow-through appointment with a nurse who is set up by Mobile Integrated Health while they're in the field. So there's some flexibility and nimbleness here to start to meet the need.
And while Jonathan's coming up, the way Mobile Integrated Health has positioned itself to, in a lot of ways, a lot of the response, the way that who they respond to is in a lot of ways driven by an application that we built through MyRC. It's an online form, it's a community outreach referral form that the first responders, paramedics have been trained to utilize by Chief Joels and his team to be able to make those referrals for folks that they've had multiple calls to respond to and that need that follow-up. So the MIH team uses that to make their plan of attack, but they are very much responding to folks sometimes on an emergent basis, depending on the individual. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, Commissioners. Jonathan Smith, Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. So I wanted to just tag along to what Jill and Bob were talking about how this is really split between thirds. So the way that, and talking with Kevin Joels about this, the way that we envisioned this was this APRN would spend a third of their time out on the Mobile Integrated Health team, third of their time out assisting with the Homeless Solutions Division, and then the other third of that time following up with folks who they're meeting at Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. So I think the outreach piece is really helpful for, I believe, the paramedics because, they have a different scope than what an advanced practice nurse practitioner can do. So we just think that this is a good way to integrate services and then kind of be out there in the community, but then also have a spot for follow-up when it warrants.
So I have used that form to sign people up for this program, and I would say that it's still not standard practice, even when it, I think, pretty clearly does fall under those categories. I do hear from Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical that it has been a game changer as far as some of the folks that call frequently, and I would say like some things are. There's an obvious structural change that could happen to within the home usually to make those calls not be necessary, but it falls outside of the scope of emergency personnel. And so is it a paramedic and a social worker? Who is the second position? Two paramedics.
Paramedics on the team.
And some of the structural things I'm thinking of are non-medical in nature. Like we can't hear the base unit for our medical fall ID, like because we can't hear it, it sends for the fire department. Just moving that unit to the area where the activity occurs is something that is not an emergency, it's not a medical thing, but it causes a lot of
And I think, Commissioner Willie, what you're speaking to is exactly the opportunity to come back to you all later this fall. I know that Chief Llewellyn has shared some success stories of the mobile integrated health team, and I think it would be really great for you to hear directly from Courtney, who's been the lead paramedic. They just replaced that second position, but Courtney has been the mainstay, and Courtney is the one that is showing up in all these unique spaces and trying to engage with the different stakeholders, including, and what you speak to, the community health workers that we have at Heartland Health. Kevin, when that second paramedic position was vacant, they did think about, the possibility of filling it with a community health worker or a social worker, because they do see that as much, but they also need that other paramedic just as much. So we are trying to work on that integration, but you need to hear directly from them about how they're thinking about what they've learned through the program, and see what it looks like in the future.
Yeah, I think the flexibility in the learning process is super important to me. And I think there's a variety of kind of combinations of who goes out on these calls that I'm sure there's a lot of variety, but I think we'll find a sweet spot if we stay curious. And also it's more efficient to bring people for the skill level that's needed and not higher than that skill level. Do we have an idea of, maybe this is in percentage, what percentage of that need, of the total need that's out there, do we think we're tapping so far with mobile integrated health? Is it just the tip of the iceberg?
I think we would need to have Kevin here for that conversation. And Commissioner, I think we will schedule another opportunity to dive deeper into MIH overall.
Okay. Commissioner, do you have any questions?
My question is a brief one. I just wanted to clarify something. You went a different direction than I expected, Bob, at the beginning when you talked about a choice between Heartland, LMH, and Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. This isn't designed to give more choices, is it?
No, this is designed to make sure we can respond to the need that's in front of us.
Okay. And those other partners, if I recall, originally we were working with LMH and maybe at one point Heartland to do what we're talking about now, Lawrence Douglas County Public Health is doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, the way I would characterize it is that we have had multiple conversations with multiple configurations of our partners about how to have variety in and appropriateness in mobile response, so that when we can solve problems in the field, that we're prepared to do that. There have been I would say there have been a lot of conversations and opportunities where I think some partners were hopeful that we would move in a direction and be where we are today. I think this is the first time where we are in a position to say, we're ready to move, the partners are committed, this makes sense and it is sustainable. And it's a next step from which we can learn and build and make smart choices as we move forward.
And then, Jonathan, from you, I'm interested in hearing sort of, does Lawrence Douglas County Public Health have the same abilities as some of those other healthcare partners to bill for services as needed, or we shouldn't worry about that?
We can bill, we may not get paid as much, but we can still bill for those services. I would say for the portion of the Homeless Solutions Division, we would treat that essentially like we do with Wellness Wednesdays. We don't bill anything for Wellness Wednesdays because we use a grant for that. And I believe the city has some grant funds that they were going to use for their portion for this. So when the APRN is out doing Homeless Solutions type of work for that 1/3, we wouldn't bill, but we would like to bill for if appropriate, if the individual has insurance and everything, for the care that we could be doing on mobile integrated health, but then also that follow-up care. I think this is another opportunity too for if there's elderly individuals who need flu shots. It's about to be flu season. This gives us the ability to go out and do that. So.
Well, this does sound like an increase in the scope of Lawrence Douglas County Public Health's work. Would that be accurate, or is that not accurate?
I would say that's accurate.
Okay, and that maybe there are other partners out there who may get a higher reimbursement rate. I picked up on that thread you just said there than Lawrence Douglas County Public Health gets, but you all are committed to making this program happen, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we think about reimbursement second and people first. So that's really why we got in, and we just wanted to say yes and get this going. And there are ways that we can get reimbursed, but we're not gonna not do this because we may not get paid as much as someone else would to do this. So to us, it's just a need in the community. So we want to step up and help address it.
Okay, thank you.
I think it is a good conversation to keep on top of as a community, that if this is a service that we as a commission want to see happen, and I think it probably is, that we're also being the most efficient with those dollars within the community, like who is the right partner. So I recognize and appreciate that this is the partner that's coming forward to serve that need, but I think it's maybe a conversation that's broader so that we're looking for the right funding sources and we're getting the right partners involved there. I did want to make a clarification, just Bob, as you were talking about, and then Jonathan, you're talking about the unhoused population, that this is a third of this is serving our unhoused population, or maybe even 2/3 if they're then coming back to the clinic for follow-up care. But that other third, that mobile integrated health, is often treating people who are housed, and a lot of times our elderly, our senior population that have particular needs. So I just wanted that to be a point of clarification, that this is not strictly a program, and the part that I interact with is not actually a program for the unhoused, it's for the housed. So it serves both.
It's a great, helpful clarification. Thanks.
Commissioner, do you have any other questions before we go to public comment? Is there anyone in the room who would like to give public comment on this item? And is there anyone online who would like to? All right, thank you. With that, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the commission for any further conversation, clarification, or motions.
Make a motion to authorize the county administrator to sign an amended outside agency funding agreement with the Lawrence Douglas County Public Health Department for $54,833.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. And that is the end of our regular agenda. Do we have any appointments for this evening?
Commissioners, there are a number of reappointments that folks that are eligible for reappointment.
Without Commissioner Reed here,
Yeah,
and
that's
being
fine.
a small commission of 3, I would suggest we hold off on appointments till a third of our commission is back.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that you guys know that we do have several that are just need to be reappointed.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So that moves us to our staff memo.
Thanks, Commissioners. Your memo is attached. Just want to point out that, so next week we're going to have our budget public hearing on the CIP, so our 5-year comprehensive capital improvement plan. And then also in that same hour at 4 o'clock for a work session, we're going to also have the Consolidated Fire District Number 1 budget hearing. So those are scheduled. On the 14th, we'll be starting again at 4, and we're going to have a follow-up conversation around the expansion of the Judicial and Law Enforcement Center and the Public Safety Building. And then I'm scheduling work sessions for later in August too. So some of these are dates and times you're going to see updated in the next couple of weeks. And Commissioners, that's all I have.
Okay, it looks like we have some work to do on appointments for next week. Commissioner, anything else you'd like to share?
Good luck to all those submitting pies for Friday's judging. This is the best part of being a Douglas County Commissioner, is judging the pie that come to the Douglas County Fair. And I hope everybody goes out and enjoys the Douglas County Fair this weekend safely and has a good time.
Thank you for that. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.